It says we are live.
All right, congrats on your first stream. I just got the message. Michael put us also live on Twitch for starting soon.
Yep.
I've made the chat a little bit bigger. I've made our mini feed a little bit smaller so that I can see everything. That seems to be working, Spencer.
I think so. I'm checking now on YouTube to see if I can see that we're live. Oh, we are live, but you can hear us on the stream.
Oh, that's interesting.
Hey, what's up, YouTube? We haven't streamed to YouTube before, so you're listening to us figure it out.
Sort of put the pieces together, as it were.
Yeah, we've been doing it to Twitch for a while, and we haven't done YouTube, so
Ethan,
LOL.
on your slobs,
Yes.
on mixers, anything going up and down?
What do you mean?
On the audio side.
Yes, it is.
Okay, we'll have to fix that on this bit then.
Can I just turn them down all the way?
No, because, well, yes and no. When you do that, you'll have to turn them back up when we go back to D&D.
Interesting.
For now, it's not too big of a concern.
No.
Michael, are we live on Twitch? Or
Yes.
in that case, set them both to live, baby. We're kicking things off right away.
All right.
Despite my best efforts, I have made myself sort of a small hobbit that you are friends with.
All right, we're good.
All right, Ethan switches to the live screen.
Already did.
We're already in?
Yeah.
Let's go.
We're rolling.
Hey.
All right, in that case, hello, everybody. Welcome to our inaugural YouTube stream and like our 806th Twitch stream. Today, we are doing DM Writer's Room. We are building a brand new play space. It is system agnostic, so you can use Pathfinder, D&D, probably even use like Call of Cthulhu if you really wanted to. We've got we're making a system, a place where you can play any system essentially. We're currently calling it Spacefair, but that is up in the air because this is our second stream on it. We could name it anything we want later on, but for the time being, we are doing a space-based TTRPG world design.
Yes.
Today, Ethan, you can take it away with what we will be working on next.
Yes, so today we are moving out of our sort of, what's the office work? 10,000 foot view, and are sort of trying to do things a little bit more granular. So last time we figured out what the factions were in the sort of system that our players assumably will be spending the most of their time in. We do think we might end up building a few more down the road. But it was proving to be a little difficult to do it that way, so we are shifting gears slightly. We are going to use those factions to try to figure out how many planets, how does it work? Is it like our space, or is it different in some fun and fantastical way? So that is going to be the sort of main thrust of what we are up to. I'm currently digging through for my notes because the time that I normally spend digging through my big pile of notes was spent setting up Streamlabs. So give me a few. So YouTube vamp while I find my notes.
Just to go over what this stream is really about, in general, the DM Writer's Room. We're trying to demystify the DM prep that goes into world building, campaign prep, session prep, stuff like that. So typically we will make an adventure in like an hour and a half, a mini arc. There's going to be a bad guy, there's going to be a dungeon, there's going to be a magic item you can get. We theme it. We have bits that we do here and there where we have to improv just DM stuff in general. It's just to give everybody else a roadmap of how we do things typically for our games. And beyond that, we make one-page RPGs and adventures that we publish through DM's Guild and Drive Through RPG and our own website. So it's demystifying, and it is in real time showing how we as a company make our adventures and settings. Right now, we are jumping into our second large undertaking. Our last one was called Prospect. It was a Wild West D&D setting. This one is our spacefaring one, and it is system agnostic yet again.
I'm perusing through my OneDrive.
I was gonna say also, so what we like doing here is like just having fun.
Yeah, mostly
this
having
is
fun.
this is our space to just kind of be our creative selves. I don't really DM, but these two DM very well. Uh, but I like creating stuff, so it just kind of works for a nice like think tank almost.
Yeah, we cover each other's backs on the creative side.
Yeah.
Ethan has the most innate DMing sense and deepest reserve of D&D knowledge. Michael, being a player and not a DM, comes from the other side where it's like, okay, I can understand why a DM would like this, but
As
how
a
would players
player,
interact with it?
I'm gonna have to
And
briefly close my camera while I poke around, but I will still be here.
yeah,
yeah,
you're
you're
good.
good. And I'm the one in the middle who likes to make jokes, and that's about it.
You've been DMing for a while now.
Yeah, I've been
Yes,
DMing for
yes,
a
God.
while. It's been, I don't know, like 3 years, 4 years of DMing. 4 years for me DMing now.
It's been
But
flowing.
yeah. On top of that, besides that, we stream a Theros actual play every Wednesday. We're going to be starting that at 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time now. We are pretty deep into that campaign at this point. We've got some videos uploaded from previous streams, but that's essentially our major streams here. Besides that, you can check out our website. Sheet
Oh,
paper found.
the other thing that I want to say with this space, as the audience, we like to incorporate what you're kind of trying to bring into what we're making. It's like a cooperative creation, of a sense.
Exactly.
We won't take the bad ideas, but we'll try and like mash them up to something that we do like. And if you do come up with banger ideas, which they usually are, we love that stuff.
Yeah, so while we're building, if you have an idea, something you want to add in, a name, stuff like that, drop it in the comments and we will try our best to implement it into the world. All right, piece of paper has been located. We are
That's
building second stage.
Yes. So, number one. So, first of all, I do have Space Fair down as our title, which is great. We have a few here. We have a faction named tentatively the Estranged Enlightened, referred to by many as the Estrangement, is a disconnected group of people that all worship these sort of dark, kind of sort of vaguely connected to like the elder mythos beings that sort of live outside of the worlds and are these large entities which obviously apparently can grant people power, but do so in a sort of dangerous and volatile way. They are lumped together by external forces, but internally they are in no way affiliated with one another and are probably somewhat bothered. So basically, there is a faction that has emerged that is the cults, and everybody is basically like, yeah, they're a member of the cults because it's just shorthand for, no, they worship like Gorlin Flam, the big fish in the sky, and it's just not worth learning for your average sort of Tom, Dick, and Sally. We have the Remnants of the Dead Empire, which is our explanation for humanity existing and sort of its function prior to existing. Again, depending on what setting you're playing and what exactly you want to do, you might not have humans. But for our own thought, everybody loves the, sometimes they're Terrans, sometimes they're humans, sometimes they have some other thing. And so we've decided that there is a great fallen empire and that was once the sort of human empire. Up next, we have the Ascended, which is I think we may have changed. No, that was the Enlightened. That's why they're up there. The Ascended we have, which is a group of people. We kept calling them. The joke was that they worshipped their sun, the sun of their little like solar system. So I guess that will remain probably true. Basically, the planet that they come from had a god of the sun, but assumably every planet with worshippers has a god of their own sun at some point. And so they are basically trying to push that out. They are renaming their god from the god of the sun to the god of all suns, and are sort of trying to push that ideal. They are sort of our big empire. in the setting. Up next, we have the Source, which is an old faction. Basically, this is a group that believes, either as a fallacy or truly, that their planet is the center of the universe, and that if they can unite everybody with themselves, they will be able to pursue true knowledge or something. We were still pretty vague at the end of the stream about what they sort of hold back was. And then we have the Preservationists, which are a sort of custodial squad that preserve planets that have yet to begin to spacefarer. They basically are the group that is in charge of making sure that their progression is not interfered with. Planets that are supposed to die should die. Planets that are supposed to live should live. And it is their job to make sure that that sort of natural order to things is maintained. We discussed often their members, a good chunk of their members being groups that have since come into spacefaring and affiliated themselves after the fact. And then we have a loose alliance, and then I have an arrow, and it says the Seekers.
Okay.
I've got a loose alliance and an arrow, and it says the Seekers.
The Seekers were the pirates.
Yes, wonderful, Michael. Absolutely, that makes sense because over in the corner near it, I have Pyrite Arrow Pirate, which I do remember is a fun fantasy trope. Is when somebody stops to take the time to be like, actually, the origin of that name is to explain why they use a word that we also use. And pirate in this world is toned by somebody stealing a giant shipment of pyrite. Questing it for themselves, yes. And so pirate has become sort of a spin-off of that term. Okay, so that's where we're at right now. Other things that we solidified that I apparently didn't feel the need to write down, but that I do remember. One is that we have described our space sort of borrowing or being inspired by one element of Spelljammer that is useful, as these sort of bubbles in which life is supported, and in between those bubbles is the void, is this sort of massive expanse. We haven't settled on how big is that expanse, how big is the space between bubbles, how dangerous exactly is it to maneuver, but we do know that like massive, horrifying fish, our great old ones swim in the void between worlds, and are held at bay by the presence of the divinity that is created by mortal life, which I love. It makes me think of the orcs from Warhammer 40k, in that it seems like everybody has this sort of shared psionic field that kind of creates these little bubbles of preservation. We do know that the gods in this world do actually manifest. They do actually change according to belief. And when a person, we didn't nail this down, but we were loosely talking about the thought that when a person who worships a god very strongly dies, they perhaps are folded into that being. They become part of its sort of manifest power. We can kind of crack down on that a little bit. So number one is we are going to be sort of making our little home corner of the galaxy, right? If you are playing Starfinder, the Pathfinder space one, I think it's Absalom Station is theirs. If you're playing Spelljammer, it's the Rock of Brawl, I think. This is a very common TTRPG trope. We are basically just starting with the, in our own parlance as humans, it's the local cluster. We are going to sort of be doing that. I don't know if we're going to limit ourselves to a single solar system, so with somewhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours to go, let's get to work. Number one, we need to have multiple suns, otherwise one of our factions doesn't make sense. So my question is, do our planets, do we have a bunch of solar systems with planets orbiting suns? Or is this a less sort of, are we not doing that as much in our world? It's obviously going to be the easiest thing for people to understand, but it is not mandatory. We could say that suns float and planets float and orbit that sun, but not in the sort of large disk format that we are used to. They could sort of drift around in sort of a bubble, like an amorphous cloud around them. They could sit perfectly stationary and turn and are just sort of placed around suns. Or it can be 5 or 6 solar systems that function exactly as we expect, exactly as we are familiar with.
I think it's...
Oh, go ahead, Spence.
I was going to say, I think it's cooler to have, like, maybe there's a solar system or a couple solar systems, but they don't all function that way. Some of them, the warmth of their god's love keeps them lit and comfortable. Some of them, it's the coldness of space doesn't touch them because they built, like, a shield around themselves, the ozone, whatever it is. I do think that we can branch out from it being all solar systems.
Sure. So that's like a big answer. We're trying to define this bubble. So of the couple of solar systems that we are dealing with here, how do we want them to function? Like, on average, what does the typical one look like? Does it look like our own? Is it a little disconnected from that? I love the idea that I do like the thought that there are these, like, rogue planets that probably were settled later and have built up, this belief over time that they are able to live on their planet, and so eventually it just becomes true. An image that immediately came to mind is a planet that has a dawn and a dusk and a cycle, but no sun.
Yeah, it's just not
Half
there.
of the planet is just illuminated for no reason. Like, it's just because everybody on the planet has come to believe that that is true, which I think is really cool. So my question is, if you pull up to your average solar system, is it a sun with planets going around it on this, like, gravitational plane that is created by a sun? Or is it something less conventional on your normal day? Are the planets, rather than all being on this same plane, are they, like, at angles? Do they do anything different? Or do we like the familiarity of it's mostly just plain normal solar systems?
I like the idea. I like the idea of it's fantasy, so it's not the same. I think it's cool of having it, and I'll call it a plane of square, where they aren't orbiting; they're just kind of shifting in different spots, sort of. It could be for different reasons and stuff. Like the sun god likes this planet more, so it holds a little bit closer.
Okay. I think we'll just take it. So it's similar to our own world. It's just a little bit fantasyified. The planets sort of shift around in a way that they are privy to that we are not, which I think is very fun. It also makes spacefaring. It gives it a fun challenge in our universe, right? You aren't able to do long-form calculations to figure out where Mars is going to be because it might not be where you expect. I think is kind of fun.
I have one idea for our one faction, our sun faction, of course. How, because the sun is so important with that faction, could we have the sun, like, enveloping all the planets that it holds domain over? And it says, well, because again, it's fantasy, so the sun doesn't have to be this ultra hot thing, but it's always present with everything. So there's no nighttime in that faction. It's always enveloped by the sun, and it's so big because it's such a strong force.
I think that, first off, to have the sun being this massive illuminating force in the sky is fun. I think the play on the sun never sets in Rome being their credo is pretty great. I don't know how it would function to have, like, all of their planets illuminated by the sun, like where they would be in relation to.
They'd be in.
Oh, interesting.
If you don't like it, that's all good.
So like a hollow sun theory almost. It's the sun is encapsulating them in a massive bright light. It's not a ball of gas.
My other major thought was that if you are close enough to somebody that is sort of a cleric or priest or cardinal of this religion, that person like walks around with a 1 mile constant daylight.
That's pretty sick.
Uh-huh.
Or it could just be that the world. I mean, we also don't need to explain it if we don't want to, right? Placing it inside of the sun is interesting. I do have some sort of logistical questions about light and heat that are difficult to let go of, because if somebody plays this in D&D, they will have spells like Sunbeam, and Sunbeam does damage. And so I do have some questions if we are going to go ahead with that. Not saying no, it's just that means that this sun is very different. Alternatives that immediately come to mind is with Spencer talking about, like, you know, the sun never sets on the Roman or the British empires, apparently. They both thought so, at least. Is it, if we don't want to explain it, it could just be that sort of inexplicably, if a planet starts to really accept this sun god, the nighttime just goes away. No explanation. It's not like this sun suddenly becomes visible halfway across the bubble. It's not that, you know, suddenly a second sun appears in the sky. It's just that one day the sun doesn't set. And that's how you know, which I think is kind of interesting. The other thought that it gives me immediately from like a storytelling perspective that's really engaging is there has to be like a really scary phenomenon, which is if a like invasion cruiser starts orbiting your planet and the population of the cruiser is high enough, one day the sun just doesn't set. Right? Enough of those people have arrived to offer your planet you know, the choice, which is, do you want your world purged, or will you begin to worship our god of the sun? The sun just doesn't go down that day, and that's how you know. Even if they're on a completely different area of the world, you know, we're talking about, you know, an invading force of 5 million shows up. I don't know. We don't have to keep that. That's very like pulp, like 80s fantasy, but I do like it, but
it hits. It's good.
Okay. So I think we're getting a little squirrely on the Sun faction. Let's talk about the local system for the Sun faction, where they sort of made origin. Let's just start
we already
defining it.
We know they're not the center of the bubble, because the center of the bubble is one of the other factions.
Yes.
So they have to be somewhere else in this orb. Maybe it could be towards the top, something like that. So the sun is beating down on the other planets from its location, something like that. And it's the planet closest to that sun that hasn't been burned away to nothing.
Okay, I think that's cool. I like the idea that other planets have been destroyed by the sun's intense heat before. It's kind of fun in a sort of poetical way. So somewhere towards the top of the bubble, there is this system. It is was the sun always this incredibly bright, galvanizing force, or has it grown brighter as people have worshipped it?
It's definitely grown brighter. This is like an eldritch god, as far as I'm concerned.
So there's going to be some symbolism behind this no matter what we do. So like suns are either red shifted or blue shifted. What direction are we feeling? I think red stars are dying, right? And blue stars are new, and white stars are brand spanking new.
Yeah.
I think they shift to red as they die. So we are sending two very different messages if we make this sun sort of blue tinted or sort of red tinted, or if we make it completely normal, like a what we think of as sort of the vaguely yellow shifting towards warm sun. Do we have any strong feelings? It's a little on the nose for them to have a red sun, but I don't hate it. I just wanted to throw it out there.
The thought of it being a blue star is still scary because it's kind of symbolizing it's still growing.
Yeah, it's not done yet. I think a blue shift is fun. I think that's an interesting take on it. And they're still worshiping it. They're actively spreading worship to this thing, so it shouldn't be dying.
Great. Has this sun become aware? Is this a god now? Did they do the dang thing?
Yeah, I mean, I liked your take on other planets having the sun never set upon them after they're taken over. I think that having it be a god with awareness makes that make more sense.
Yeah, all of a sudden it just is daytime there.
Yeah.
I think is sort of Interesting. Okay, so it's a blue shifted aware sun. How many planets? Just pick a number. More
that
than 4,
worship
less
it?
than 12.
Oh, okay, that are in that system.
Yep. We're just trying to define space. We're not trying to like label things yet. We'll get there.
Yeah.
We're just trying to carve out what does it look like.
10.
10. Great. 10 planets. Okay.
You have that theory, like dual star systems, right?
Where there's two sort of like twisted-
Exactly. We're just out of space and the thought popped up. Like, we can probably incorporate that somewhere.
What did you Catherine just microwaved something and it smells so fucking good.
Nice.
I'm dying. She has her headphones in. She can't hear me. Okay.
It's for later, but I would like one of our systems to incorporate that.
Oh yeah, like a two-star system I think is fun, and also tells us things, and probably makes them the bitter rivals of this group. Okay, so we have this blue shifted sun that is aware, 10 planets orbit it in this sort of like more whimsical fashion that we have described. Is there, let's say, I want one. What is something else about this system? Something else, just something to give it a little flavor, a little pizzazz.
I mean, I do think that the dead planets, this could be the only surviving habitable planet. The other ones have all been wiped out by the sun's waves.
So there's 10 planets, but only one of them is all right.
So are they all closest? Is this the furthest planet, and that's why it's the only one that survived?
Yeah. I mean, that's the most obvious solution. There's the alternative that is this is the closest, and somehow it hasn't been burned away. And it's through the
That's
worship
pretty
and
good.
whatever else.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But how did we initially get? All right, sorry, Earth physics brain Ethan is like, but how did they get? They had to start living on the planet.
And the sun was smaller until they started worshiping it. All the other ones were alive. That planet worshipped them, and it grew and grew and grew. They were the most devout. It was protected.
So
the other ones were wiped as it grew.
What I love about that is them. So they didn't know that they were killing these other planets.
Oh,
They weren't
no.
spacefarers
This was
yet.
before they were exploring, and so they just kept worshiping, and the sun began to grow, and they didn't realize that they were literally burning the galaxy down, which is such a fun metaphor for what they're doing
Yeah.
to the bubble. Love that. Okay, great. I'm just gonna write, Husk worlds, unintentional. Okay, and I think with that, I think we are good on that system.
God, the first travelers from that world going to the other planets.
Seeing like
burnt
ruins.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a rough one.
But but that's the great thing though, is I think that's what a player would think if they arrived. But I think if you ask the people on the planet, they would just be like, "Oh, it must have been a punishment." They wouldn't put it
they
together
didn't
at
worship.
all. They'd be like, they
didn't
weren't devout
worship it.
enough, like
Mhm.
to earn clemency. That's crazy.
And they're kind of right.
In the way that, like, if you throw a grenade through somebody else's window and you're like, you should have dodged faster. So I guess they're sort of tangentially correct, but okay. So next up, most obvious, we have the source. We have the source worshippers, those that seek to spread their truth. We now know, because of where we've placed them in the way the bubbles work, that they are completely delusional. Right? They are just the ones at the center of the bubble. They're not even at the center of anything else that matters. They're just at the middle of the bubble, and have decided that makes them extra special. So I know that that's where they are. Let's start simple. Somebody say a number, and that number will be how many planets there are. We already have 10, and this system has
3.
3. Great. Wow.
Ooh,
Sparse.
Small, yeah.
Wow. But that would help them. They would feel sort of illustrious for the effort. Okay. Great.
I think these planets are big, though.
Yeah, these are the like massive planets in the middle. Makes
Now,
sense.
I know I know we don't necessarily want to do physics. I know we don't
Really?
necessarily want to do physics. But if the source civilization lives on some sort of Cloud City style shit, that's kind of fun. That's a little because a big planet stops being solid if it gets big enough, in theory. So I'll give us
Oh
two
yeah.
choices: is this a really big planet, and we are sort of giving Newton a pat on the head and kicking him out the door, or do they sort of cloud surf on the surface of this like super dense gas planet? They're both fine.
I mean,
It's hard to adventure on a gas planet, which is sort of the dig against it, right? It makes things a little bit challenging as opposed to big planet.
I think that cloud works fine. It's just that they've been there long enough that they have floating cities and like massive structures. So it's not that you're planet delving so much as you are cityscape delving when you're an adventurer. You're going through like a 5,000 story tall building. That's the adventure.
I think what you could do is the gas as you can delve into the gas, but as you get further and further, it becomes dense to the point where it's somewhat solid.
Some
Um,
firmness.
yeah, it's almost a solid. It's still gas, but it is buoyant enough.
I'm telling you right now, if we ever run the setting, and I do, and we're running it in Dungeons and Dragons, this is the homeworld of Cloud Giants. And so it's a fun juxtaposition of like there's this other group that has settled here, and then there are the Cloud Giants who just live in the cloud, like without needing to do anything else. Really interesting. Okay, so there's this sort of we are sort of doing this cloud surfing on these kind of giant
Oh,
planets.
then we get like cloud waves.
This is all very good. I'm immediately.
I love that.
And there's something fun about, again, we are trying to be at least a little bit symbolic. These people who are using being at the center of the bubble to claim empire, like not even really living on that world, right? Living above it is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
What is something else fun about the system? Unrelated. Is there something different about the sun? Is the asteroid belt doing something strange?
These plants don't move at all. Like most of them shift around a little bit. These are standstill.
The planet in the middle can be perfectly still, the gas planet, and then the other ones can still move around it. But it truly is centered. It's not moving anywhere. It's right in the middle of the dome. It doesn't rotate, sits still.
So does the sun orbit the planet?
That'd be interesting.
Like the giant sun in the sky from the other civilization, or the sun in this system?
The sun in this system. Does it orbit?
The sun orbiting the planet kind of rules. I do have to say.
It still makes sense too because of that source being. I don't know if we agreed on it, but with it being this black hole, this miniature black hole sort of thing.
I mean, there has to be something. I like the concept of miniature black hole just because I love a wizard that ponders an orb, and so the thought that at the heart of this gas planet there is in fact a like facility built around the core of the planet that studies this orb is kind of fun. Yeah. If you're playing in D&D, it's immediately great because I know, like stat block wise, it's just a sphere of annihilation sitting at the center of this planet that is this impossibly dense orb that immediately destroys anything that touches it. That's pretty fun. The image of pulling in and knowing that you've arrived because the sun is slowly trundling around a planet is pretty interesting. Which also, there's a lot of fun stuff there. Okay. Up next, we have. Now we're getting into we can have options here. The Seekers and the Custodians probably don't have a system, right?
No, they sprouted out as a like grouping of other spacefarers.
So we've done the Source and we've done the Ascended. So that leaves us with two major ones left. One is the Estrangement, is the Estranged Enlightenment. Are they centered somewhere by coincidence? I don't know how much sense that makes. Unless there's like one system that is right up against the void. It's like skitching along the edge of the bubble. That would be the only place where it would make sense because it's for practical reasons. They want to be closer to the void.
Hear me out. There's a planet that is actively rubbing against the outer perimeter of the dome, and it is whittled down to a half dome that goes across it. Like they can hold their hand out and touch the dome as they go around. So it's a half sphere around the dome.
Okay. All right. We just sort of have this like half planet that is sort of skating on the bubble.
And this is more of a pilgrimage.
Yeah. So
planet.
this is like a very important site, less so than the place that all these people live.
Yeah,
Great.
exactly.
I like them having a location that you can associate with them, and also this is such a fun setting for like a quick adventure dip. It's like the big head in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so the other big one is the dead empire of humanity. We have some pretty important choices to make here. One, did that empire spread across multiple bubbles? Yes or no? And then two, by extension, if it never escaped this bubble, we need to decide where they originated, and if it did, we need to decide if they originated in this bubble or not. So, question one. Did they manage to travel between bubbles? A technology that is not lost, but that has certainly become a lot more difficult.
I want to pull back. I'm really tempted to say nobody can get to other bubbles, and it has never happened. So we're building this bubble in a universe of bubbles that are incomprehensible. Nobody goes there. Nobody knows about them. There are no contacts. It's just tempting, so we can say this is the world. Is this bubble? Everything else is a question mark. Like, you can't go there.
It's interesting because it kind of keeps us with space travel as this odd thing where it's like the concept of like intergalactic travel is still not something these people can do.
Yeah.
I don't know if that... So I think we should do that because you've been pushing for that pretty hard since we started. That like this is where we are, and getting to the other places is impossible. I imagine that many people try, but there's also no way to know if it works.
No,
They
you send them
leave,
out,
they
and you're
go.
like, hopefully.
Yeah, it's like we don't know. Nobody's ever returned, but who knows how long it takes to get to them? Like you guys, there's no information.
Yeah.
Mayo.
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
I'm here.
Spencer's frozen.
Uh-oh.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, nope.
Can you see me?
We're good. Yes. So I think I like that, and I like the idea that they don't even know how long it would take to get there. So the people that do ship out, who knows? Maybe they have. Maybe it has succeeded every time anyone has tried. It's just we have no idea because it could take 100 years to get to the planet, and so there could be other bubbles that are like these big tubes full of corpses just keep arriving here. It's dumb.
I think the only people that might have any clue are the enlightened. It's like the highest of enlightens.
There might be a secret to it.
I think that's just what they get. Like, that's got to be part of what they know that is incomprehensible to the mind. Like, if you ran up to a random person on the street in 1325 and showed them a picture of a nebula and beamed into their mind an awareness of the physics implications and meaning of that, they would go crazy. Like, they would immediately they'd babble their way through the rest of their lives. So yeah, I think that makes sense, right? It's this, especially because the enlightened we framed as like they aren't crazy is probably not the right term. Enlightened is correct. It's just they have become aware of truths that makes daily life impossible. Is a better way to think of it. Is they have become aware of things that make functioning within society no longer something that they can do, and occasionally, obviously, trending towards violence because the creatures that give them this are these massive, consumptive beasts. Okay, so there's no travel between. I like that. So, the human empire, we have two choices. One is that even at the height, they never got out of the bubble, which tells us one narrative story. And two is they aren't from this bubble. We have ruins, but clearly no homeworld, and that's what makes them this insane thing from the past, is that like we don't even know how they got here. Those are both good options. Which one are we inclined towards?
I love to make it more mysterious and that they don't come from here.
Great.
Yeah.
I think that rules.
If
Clearly, there's a way to do it, and we have no idea. No matter how advanced these civilizations are, they haven't gotten to that point yet.
if I can, to make them even more like civilized engineer savant sort of, they've created, there might be like a solar system or a system of their own that they made, that they have all these ruins. The system is man-made.
It's all metal that they've put together, and they're like, no, this was a fully man-made solar system. That's pretty cool. So that's where a lot of the ruins are of theirs. But it's like, this wasn't natural.
Yeah, I like it. My immediate response is I think it lines up how they performed that travel extremely clearly, which is if you need the protection of the belief of enough people to fill a system, then the reason that this man-made system exists that the people in our world don't know is that it is a giant ship. Right? In the entire artificial system can move as a unit, and if you had it well populated by people believing unified things, all part of the same empire, they would be able to pilot it through the void. And if we want there to be like hundreds of years between bubbles, that also adds the fun of like, that's also part of why it works, is it's like 4 planets orbiting an artificial power source. And so it's like, yeah, no, 3 generations from now are going to get to their destination.
If that's the one thing that's not man-made, the source, it is, and it's not, it's a Dyson sphere in a sense.
Oh, so the sun is sort of the engine of this. So we need to put a bunch of fantasy on that immediately. We need to make that impossible to figure out right now. Like,
oh, the Dyson sphere, the we're calling it metal. It's all rune work.
yeah, so this is
Yeah, it's alien magic.
yeah, this is a good moment for we've talked about demystifying here. I'm going to give a little Dungeon Masterly advice, which is if you give players a thing that they think they can drive, they will drive it. 110% of the time, if you put cars in hell, your players will drive the car. If you put a giant mech in a dwarven fortress, your players will get into the giant mech in the dwarven fortress and they'll be like, can I pilot this? Immediately. So if at any point we queue up the thought that this is a ship, that will be, your campaign is derailed. Nothing else will happen other than that. So
Now the player.
what I'm thinking of is there's a sci-fi series that's like this where it's fantasy and you're following the players along, but if you pay enough attention, you start to realize that they are in a massive ship and that the trees that they are describing are in fact these like massive data coils, and that, you know, like the mountain, like they describe like there's a volcanic setting that is, to somebody paying enough attention, quickly you realize that it is a furnace. So we do need to put enough fantasy language on this that it's hard to figure out. Spencer, you made a lot full, like, what was that?
Yes. I think that we've already set up sort of a mythos for the humans being wiped out. I think a fun alternative could be those humans, that civilization came here, immediately abandoned this ship, and set about spreading their offspring to the other planets of the system, and then said, forget what we've done. It's a directive of the first descendants and the second descendants and the third descendants to be like, we didn't fly here. Humans have always been here. Don't remember that we came from somewhere else. And that's why there's humans everywhere. It's why nobody populates that planet, that system anymore. They don't know how it functions. It's because they were told you have to populate other places.
Consign this to oblivion. This is done.
Yeah.
Okay, so my question is why?
Yeah.
My first
and that's the big question. I have no idea.
Is the ship heads out? I think that if we want to stick with Dead Empire, the ship pilots out and is in communication with Homeworld. And like 50 years into the travel, Empire falls. Whatever dumb thing they did to kill themselves happens, and these people only survive because they are in the void when it happens. And so the conclusion they come to when they arrive is, the technology that is keeping us alive right now is also what will kill us. We need to destroy it. We need to completely remove it from existence. The scientists volunteered to have their minds wiped. Everybody said, like, for the rest of the trip, for the next 2 generations, they were like, we are not going to teach anyone how to do this, so that by the time they arrive, everybody who knows how to do what we did will be dead.
Yeah, I like that.
I was gonna say the reason for them leaving, or the cause of not being able to get back, any of that could be the monsters ate their bubble.
Yeah, there's something fun about like it's really close to like Elder Scrolls lore, but there is something fun about like we talked about this a little bit. They tried to make a god, right? They tried to create one. They tried to say like the ultimate of act of hubris. We will weaponize belief to make the perfect deity, and in doing so, they pierced the bubble, and their entire system was just consumed.
And yeah, so these would be the astronauts essentially that were on this system. So we could combine the two. It wasn't they were out on an alternative mission and they happened to be saved. It was that planet's end times were nearing. They said, we are building this. We're sending the people we can. They get out on their escape. The planet loses the last functionality because those 6 million whatever are gone, gets eaten, and they're like, now we need to forget how we've done this.
So it's so this is an escape pod.
Yes. And then they were like, we're done.
It's also Superman, which is great. I love that it's Superman.
Oh yeah.
Is that this is, this is Kal-El being sent out into the stars to live. Okay, so I think that's great. We've wrapped up humanity with a nice bow, and we have this fun escape pod system, and we can do a lot of the fun. Where I think the inspiration for this has to come from is if you guys the like hostile architecture that's used to keep people out of nuclear radiation zones. The like giant black spikes,
make it scary,
and the stuff where basically their goal was to make it so that in 10,000 years, humans that speak a different language and have a different culture will arrive here and will be like, I'm not going there. We'll be like, whoa, I know when someone's trying to tell me something's bad. Okay, so I think that's great. So this is our sort of main physical bodies. So that leaves us with 2.5 systems, and then 1 system that nobody goes to. So I guess 3.5 systems, one of which is this sort of lost property. How many more do we want there to be? And that will change the scale of our crusade. That is the main thing that changes, right? If there's 6 systems, then the Ascended are a desperate threat that has to be handled now, right? They've already taken a few other systems. They've already taken a few other planets, and there's only like 6 systems to take. It means that they are a threat today. That is going to be what our campaign book is about. If there's 400 systems, and we're just going to talk about the most settled and well-known and spacefaring ones, then they're hardly a threat at all. They really are the sort of distant, like, potentially bad thing. And the same goes for our sort of source truthers at the middle of the bubble, right? They are a drastic threat if there are 5 planets, right? They will eventually, if they continue to build, be able to take over the bubble. If there's 30 systems, it's sort of like, I don't know, what the rest of the world must feel about America, where you're like, that seems bad. And maybe it's your unlucky day, and you're the Panama Canal, and things are going to get real weird for you geopolitically. If there's 200, then they're just the weirdos at the middle of the universe. And for the most part, people get pamphlets. It's like Jehovah's Witness. You're like, yeah, sure, the truth.
I think to make our Defender Syndicate make sense, it needs to be at least the 30, where there's a lot of systems. There's also a lot of loose planets floating about that probably have life on them that aren't part of a system. So it'd be like 30 systems and then loose amalgams here and there of individual planets.
That also makes the employment of dark vision really fun. people are playing this setting in the D&D world is it's fun if there are planets that just don't rely on the heat of a sun, and so the entire attendancy of the planet has dark vision, and that is sort of the way that they navigate. I think that's kind of interesting. Okay, so we want to go at least. So let's say we want at least 25. Do we want to kick it up to like 100 and blow out the scale of a lot of what is going on? Because it's important to remember that, at least in theory, right, we are designing for TTRPGs. We are not designing for war games. So we can't afford to kick it up to 100 planets and just say, hey, you're 7 people on a Star Cruiser. It's not your job to end the war and save the universe. Like, that's not you. That's not you. You are, Mordenkainen can't actually, like, save the planes and, like, keep the wheel balanced, right? There's, like, 1 million people that do that. That's sort of the D&D solution to this problem. Is like there's 8,000 cities, and they all have big problems, and half of them, some celestial being is trying to drag them somewhere. Or we can scale back to the sort of, this is a little bit of a dismissive term, the sort of video game scale. Where it's like, we cut out the corners so that you really feel like you can solve the problems. So the question is, like, how politically involved do we want the game to be? Because if there's 25 systems, you are going to get wrapped into the struggle, right? The war is going to come to your doorstep, and someday you are going to have to, your party will care about it, and that is going to be what they talk about. If not, and it's like hundreds of systems, your party is going to be the more typical D&D fantasy. I'm saving this world. I'm saving this system. There's a big scary group, but they're going to be scary in 2,000 years. That is the sort of more normative pulp fantasy kind of vibe. Do we have a preference between those two? They are obviously pretty different.
I've been trying to debate which one I like more, because like I do like imminent threat stuff. Like it directs you very hard, but also I like the not my problem, not my circus, not my monkeys.
A lot of it is sort of like, what player experience are we going for, right? Because the two different feelings there are going to be what changes the most for DMs and players. In the 25 system world, what you do is going to feel important. If you save a planet, it's one of like 400 planets. It's like saving France. It's like saving Japan. If we go to the larger scale, it's like saving a town. It's like saving a city. And things like the Ascended, right, this sun cult, that they're not a problem you're solving. They are a force of nature, right? They show up, and all that means for you is we have to go. Like, that's what it is. It's like a tsunami coming. It's not something you can fight. It's right. You're not going to win. You're not going to beat them. You might crash a ship into the moon, because players do stuff like that. You're not going to kill the Sun Emperor and dethrone the god. Like, it's not going to happen at a certain scale. Or, again, we shift down to what Spencer was initially saying, and maybe that is what your campaign is about.
I'm going to vote 100 systems. When you are designing as a DM, I think that gives you more options.
Okay.
If you start tier 1, you're going up to tier 3. It's you guys are on an outskirt system from the solar domain. By the time you get to tier 3, the solar domain is coming. They're knocking. Now you need to deal with that as a threat immediately. But tier 1, you're dealing with your system's issues. Whatever the fuck the thing is, the asteroid spider crashes down. You got to fix it.
Yeah.
So that way, it is an option. But it's like, this is not what everybody's campaign is going to be.
It's very fun for like a West Marches style thing, where it is like, hey, you can't just leave. Like, you can't just go do other stuff. Again, what we've sort of done is we keep talking about it this way. It's very much what we've just done is choose between Star Wars and Star Trek again, right? Star Wars, there's like 25 systems that matter, and they fight each other for dominance. Star Trek, there's a million, and we're always saving somebody from something. There's always a thing. There's always a sun. There's always a planet. There's always a problem. And so we are sort of telling Star Wars, you have fun with that, and going the Trek angle, which makes sense to me, especially because, like, if you want to tackle the thing, start at level 8 and play, Duke Moonwalker and his buds, and take out the Sun God. I don't care. Do what you want to do. It's just going to take a little creative flexing for the DM. Okay, so this is a big. So we are just making systems that we care about, and there is a big nice page in our book that says, DMs, this place is a wonderful menagerie of planets and systems and space stations and all kinds of things. Put whatever you want in this world. We are going to give you some examples of areas that we designed that we think are cool and interesting. If you don't like them, cut them out. If you do, keep them. Okay?
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
A fun way to design it takes a lot of the pressure off, so I think that's going to be pretty cool. Okay. So in that case, we have obviously our sort of big political powers, right? We have our two scary systems then. These are the two systems where it's like, all right, everybody, we need to get fake ship coordinates. We're docking on, we're docking on, Emberum Prime. We need to paint the ship. Everybody needs to put on the cult outfit, and we need to button it up because we need to make a trade deal with, Yukon Cornelius up there somewhere. So from here, I have a question for you guys, which is, how do we want to proceed with designing? We have two major options right now. Option one is we spend the next chunk of our time with these people, right? We flesh out these really big factions, and then we start to diversify the factions a little bit, right? We start to sort of fill in a few other people that live a few other places. We decide, like, what are the major systems for these people? What are the major areas that they are? Or option two, we make some real broad write-ups about these people, right? The Sun Empire is evil, they're lawful evil, and when they show up, it's bad. And that's it. The Truth Empire, lawful neutral, and when they show up, it's bad. And that's all we really worry about, and we will just sort of go system to system and make, like, little things that have a problem to solve and some interesting things going on. And once we have, like, 10 of those, we'll be like, that's a setting.
I think the first option, let's dive deeper into each one, and then be like, and then they spread here, and then they have a conflict here and an alliance here.
So point of order, do we have 17 minutes or do we have 47 minutes?
17 minutes.
Okay, cool. So I think we've done some good work here, which I enjoy. I'm going to say, do we want to make some big choices about space travel for 17 minutes? Or do we want to pick a faction and do as much as we can in 17 minutes?
Let's do some space travel stuff. This is a space game. We need to figure it out.
We've done a lot of faction work already. So.
I have prepared a few logistical questions.
Okay, good.
I enjoy the framing at the beginning where you were like, Ethan's done the most DMing, because I love that especially in this one, I'm the one that's like, all right, unfortunately, I do have some questions that we do need answers to.
As the COO and most experienced DM, it has to be.
Number one up front. This is the most important decision we are going to make. Is there oxygen in space? Can you breathe in there? Because notably, I will say my personal favorite, in Treasure Planet, one of the best movies of all time, you just seem to be able to breathe in space. And we're all just sort of cool with that and don't think about it too hard. In Spelljammer, you can't. If you fall off the ship and the air bubble leaves you, you die. So my question is, can you build a cool skateboard and fly into space and not die? Or do you need a space helmet?
I vote you can breathe in space. You are in a dome of belief.
Yeah, you could.
I think it makes the most sense. Can you breathe in the space outside of the dome? Fuck no.
So when you get to the void?
Yeah, the void has no oxygen.
And I also think
Space
that is
does.
the least of your problems in the void.
Yeah, exactly. It's just one of the things. They sent the first group out. They're like, get out there. And they went, and they instantly died. And they're like, what the fuck was that?
What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly.
That's okay. So you can breathe in space. Number two.
I was thinking, before we go on to the one thought I was having is if there's a way to make it like, you can, but disadvantage or something. But you're working with exhaustion outside of the plans. But and we want to just make it's everything's air. I'm cool with that too.
Yeah, I could see like a cold damage mechanic. I think it gets a little bit complex.
We have rogue
I
world, so we can't do cold damage.
Yeah. So I vote we just go with it is oxygen. And that's why
Cool.
there's so many spacefaring planets. They built a strong enough thing that launched them from their
They,
planet's gravity, and they made it.
they made a really strong catapult, and one guy's just out there right now.
Hey, it does it.
Number 2 is a two-parter, and another
Okay.
pretty central choice, especially for the pacing of adventures. Number 1, how far apart are planets? Number 2, how fast do ships go?
Hmm.
Are ships fast cars? Are ships planes? Or are ships rocket ships? So do ships go 30 miles an hour? A couple hundred miles an hour? Or a couple thousand miles an hour?
I think
Anything other than the first option means that you cannot stand up on the outside of your ship, or you will go "Wah!" and be gone.
yeah.
So that pigeonholes us a little bit if you want people to sort of swashbuckle. We need those ships to not be that fast. Or we need to have a reason why it doesn't matter that they aren't that fast. That's sort of our, like, options there. But somebody needs to be like, thank God we invented the gravity boots or whatever. That's option 1. Option 2, it's as fast as a plane or a train. And so, we sort of let characters from like Mission Impossible do that every now and again, and we all just kind of like roll our eyes a little bit and we're like, well, this is fine, right? It's not healthy to do, but you can. Option 3, no. You will be left behind. You will drift in space for 3 days and then die of dehydration.
Yeah, I think 2. I think it goes up to a couple hundred miles per hour. The system is like pretty large, but it's not a billion miles long. You're never going to get to the other side. It's like give it a couple weeks of travel and you can get pretty far.
So so the danger of falling off your ship is starvation. It's not, being ripped apart by gale force winds. It's if you fall off the ship, you won't be 2 years from where you're going, but you might be a couple weeks, and that's not going to be super fun for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And as
I'm
far
cool
as
with that.
swashbuckling goes, it's easy to say like when you're within a certain distance of a planet, you have to slow down lest you get pulled into the gravity and slam into it. So you swashbuckle onto another ship because you're both going slow because you're too close to another planet. Yada yada yada.
There's also a very practical explanation for this that I think goes underused, which is you don't want to blow the other ship up if you are a pirate. You want the other ship to stop moving so that you can steal their shit. So if you get assaulted in space, you're going to slow down because that's going to be the goal. Pirates in this world, certainly the main thing they must have is some sort of like speed dampening tractor beam thing that slows you down to a pace where you can climb up on top of your ship and jump between ships so that you can kill the captain and take their shit.
A big plunger with a rope. Yeah.
Yeah. You were talking about how long it takes to get places. I think within solar system, I think that travels pretty fast.
Oh, for sure.
It's just the between solar systems is
Are we talking
elongated just a little bit.
okay, are we talking our world pretty fast, which means 4 or 5 hours, or are we talking medieval world pretty fast, which is like 3 days?
Our world pretty fast, 4 or 5 hours to another planet.
Okay.
And then to another solar system is like that long couple weeks before you get there.
Okay, so quite the jump then. So it's like a couple hours. Maybe if you're trying to traverse like a big system, it'll be like a day. And then going between is like, getting on a freighter. You're going to be out there for a couple weeks.
And it's very similar to the D&D travel. You go from one town to the next, it takes a day. You go from one city to the next, it's going to take you a week. You're going to be on the road for a while.
Those are my biggest logistical questions. I must unfortunately arrive at the last, which is, do ships have cannons on them or do they have lasers on them?
Yes.
This might be the biggest choice we make sort of vibe-wise other than the oxygen thing.
Yeah.
Are we loading a cannonball into a thing and shooting it? Or are we cranking up a big space laser and shooting a big space laser? From
I-
a
What do
from a
we-
DMing perspective,
Yeah.
I prefer a cannon because it's easier to run. From a cinematic standpoint, I prefer a laser because lasers are incredible. They're just so cool.
I think most use cannons, and there's like theories and thoughts, and there's like a couple like the Ascended might have like a ship with lasers.
Yeah, it's secret. They never pull it out. Like it's buried somewhere on their base. That's pretty fun. I think that cannons. I think cannons and javelins, like a whaling ship, is what you got going
And
on
we
here.
sort of nod to the like worst things. I do have to say, if this is immediately, I know that the Seekers are a unified group, and then pirates are those that have turned to taking
rogues.
down individual ships. If we could have yet another layer of bad, which is pirates that kill everybody aboard, being called whalers, is kind of good.
Yeah,
If it's
pretty
like,
sick.
if even within that there is like another thing where it's like, if you are part of the like official group and you don't do anything fucked up, you're a seeker. If you start to attack other seekers, steal medicine, go down the not so great path, you are a pirate. And then when you just start slaughtering people wholesale, you are something else. I think that's very interesting. It does tend to be true of real life criminal organizations, right? Where
And-
you are either organized, or you are outside the organization, or you are a problem.
Mm-hmm.
To go along with the pirate name with pyrite, I think whalers, they make widows essentially. They
Oh, that's so
whale.
cool!
Oh, that's good. So I have two things. One thing, everyone say hello to Scrub Lord Rebirthed.
Hello, Scrub Lord Rebirth.
Asked how we're doing. We're all doing pretty awesome.
Yeah,
Hope
feeling
you're doing
pretty
awesome
good
too.
about it. This has been a really fun one.
Yeah, and then the second thing I was gonna say, it goes along with the whaling. I was gonna say, how are we making it real? Are there space whales?
That was my initial question is,
There
what are
has
the
to be.
threats in space?
There's got to be animals in there.
Yeah, there's oxygen. Of course they would be floating around
Space
up there.
whales
That-
are a trope that's incredibly cool, and space
Yeah.
sharks I insist upon.
Of course,
There's gotta
space
be-
sharks, space whales, asteroid spiders, those are all threats you've got in this space.
I think we should have space monkeys too.
Space monkeys,
I'm
sure.
really excited for us to publish this book, and I'm very excited for the 5e varietal of the book to have the subclass Circle of the Void, which is druids that transform into space creatures. It's just, I'm immediately sold.
Oh, birds can just fly forever.
They're like, oh, birds, those don't exist here. They fly between planets nonstop.
Another important note. I assume there's no gravity in space.
Yes.
Not
When does
until
the-
you close.
When does the gravity stop? Because if
Mile
we don't have an
up.
oxygen barrier, then we don't actually have a good reason for gravity to stop, which doesn't matter because it's fantasy and everybody loves fantasy and no one cares about gravity. But it does leave me with a rather important question, which is, when does the gravity stop? Does it
Like
stop
how
at,
far away from the planet?
Does it stop at the clouds? Does it stop where we would think it would stop? Does it stop further than that?
I like the clouds being the barrier, and that makes it super weird for our cloud planet.
Do ships dock on clouds? Visually, or not at all? Or do you land on the planet? Because like these are sort of the levels, right? Because something that Star Wars deals with a little bit, right, is the thought that there are ships that are too big to land, right? You're sort of like Star Destroyer style things. They're too big. If they landed on a planet, they would fall apart. We know we have a giant empire, which means we know that eventually we're going to have a really big, cool ship with a laser on it called like the Empyrean or something. So when a ship lands on a planet, what does it look like? Do the ships stay in orbit? Do the ships actually land on the surface and then take off?
I think the ships land on the surface. I think the military vessels probably have refueling stations and things like that.
Sure.
Places where they can then shuttle people down from. but for the most part, ships fly into the clouds and land.
So my question is answered with we are doing normal, what you would think of when you think of space. There's gravity until you get past weather. And once the weather stops, the gravity stops, and we call it a day. Love that.
Yeah.
Is there space weather?
I mean, there's like space clouds in real life.
Space storms, stuff like that.
Space
Like dust
storms. That's what I mean, not clouds.
Like I could see like there being like it'd be called like a rainstorm, but it's hailing like rocks. It's a meteor shower.
Next up, does everybody fly the same way?
What do you mean?
Does everybody
But
fly the same
general...
way? So like in the sort of Star Wars and all of that, we are sort of functioning. Everybody seems to have like some form of like combustion fusion engine, right? In your kind of more fantasy inclined Treasure Planet-y stuff, some ships have a big rocket, some ships have a big sail with a fun name. We kind of go back and forth.
I say it's
in
all propeller
Spelljammer,
based.
the ship just goes and just leaves. Like, it just picks up off the ground. There is no... I mean, there is a propulsion. We're not getting into that. We're not here to write Spelljammer. So my question is, do all ships fly the same? And if so, how do ships fly? Is it fuel? Is it something else power? Is there something about the void that lets you just sort of coast on some energy that exists there? Or is it a total free-for-all, and it's just up to how your group first began to explore space?
Free for all, 1,000,000%. I think that some of them have sails and they ride the winds of the void. I think some of them have propellers. I think some of them use jet fuel. It's all about where the space travel originated from, right? The solar empire probably uses the heat waves from the suns to push them forth. Whatever. So I think it's dependent on where the ship is from.
I think I love the idea. I think some of the like newer systems that have just gotten to space travel, I think some of them just saw some like one of the ships like by and is like, well, I guess it's a thing, and it's just the power of belief.
There's definitely some planets that saw a UFO and went, I guess it works, yeah. And they tied together a bunch of sticks and flew off into the sky. I think that's very funny.
We do need to make super clear at some point how many people need to believe something for it to start being true.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's got to be. I'm hoping it's pretty planet-wide. And then my last, one of my more finicky questions. How many people speak Common, right?
Ooh.
Almost
is language
everyone.
a barrier? In D&D, language is not a barrier. Everybody speaks Common. It used to be a huge barrier. Sometimes players, right? I think in first edition, dwarves had like a 25% chance to not know Common, to have to only speak in Dwarvish. In other games, language is also usually sort of kind of abandoned very quickly just because it is a very complicated thing to deal with. Do we have a unified language, and if so, why? I know we have this human empire that once disseminated itself, but I have some questions there, right? Like, when you start spacefaring, do you pick up Common? Do you pick up Terran or whatever the hell it's called just because it's what the intergalactic community speaks? The interbubular system speaks? Or was it more unified than that? That's a real sort of brain teaser for us here.
My first reaction is that if you go to a planet that's not spacefaring yet, which you shouldn't do, if you do that, those people aren't going to understand, or they're not going to understand a word you say. They don't speak Common. Common is the language of the intergalactic travelers. They've all taken to space. It's the universal language. Go to a planet that's not flying yet, they're not going to understand you. You're not going to understand them.
So
I think there could be like a linguist feat where if you give them enough time, they can understand what they're saying, they can converse.
You spend like an hour. That's fun.
Yeah, exactly.
So, follow-up question. Is Common like... is it this sort of language that this group that happened to disseminate themselves spoke, and so has become very popular? Or is it a language that came later when spacefaring emerged and people started to actively meet up like, just so I see two options. One is that this is a language that humanity brought everywhere as they disseminated, and option B is humanity went around and did not teach their language to everybody because of what we've said before, trying to like strike themselves from the record. And the language that is spoken now is devised. Is groups started to meet in space, and they had a meeting where they were like, we need to be able to communicate with each other. This sucks. And they came up with a sort of phonetic kind of alphabet. And that happens, and so it is a created language made to respond to space travel.
I like that. I don't want everything to be tied back to humanity. So I think that works.
Right now, nothing is tied back to humanity. I want to be super clear. Right now, absolutely zero.
Just
the
that
only
system,
thing we know is that they are everywhere because they were everywhere. That's all we have right now, is that Terrans are on every planet, which I do love, because I do think it's deeply funny that space travel started, and there was this moment where people were like, your planets have the pink ones too?
Yeah, what the
We have
hell?
them. And that was very confusing for everybody for like 200 years until they discovered these like abandoned spaceships, and we're like, oh, I get it.
Yeah, I like Ethan's second idea too.
Okay.
Where it's,
So we have this
what
sort
are we
of
calling?
divide.
Yeah, it can't be common. So what do we want to say it is?
Well, in Star Wars, it's basic.
Basic.
In Star Wars,
common.
it's basic. It's common in Dungeons and Dragons. I mean,
Call it universal.
and this is where
yeah.
we announce we've actually been sponsored by Universal Studios.
Get that out. Fuck Disney.
I like it's the traveler's language, or
I like Universal. I like Traveler. There's something kind of fun if we want to do another fantasy trope. We're naming the setting Spacefair. The language could be Spacefair, and that could be what we are nodding to in our title.
We could call it like Omni.
Omni's good.
Omni's more sci-fi than fantasy. Personal
Yeah.
choice. If that's what you like, that's great. That's pushing us in a direction.
Yeah. Scrub Lord also said that they like Universal.
I thought you were about to say Scrub Lord, and I was like,
Yeah, Scrub Lord.
We're gonna speak Scrub Lord.
okay. So I kind of like the okay. So we can go with Universal. I immediately, I mean, one of our two empires has to have a language that they want to replace Universal, which I think is fun. Like
sure.
Immediately, the Ascendant have to speak like Solar and insist that everybody else does. It's like a classic device of empire. It's America did it like everywhere. It's why American is so common. We literally did this. So I think that's kind of fun. Go ahead.
I was thinking what are they called? The center. Or what's the group? I was thinking them because they're all hoity-toity.
I think they probably were some of the first ones into space. They probably helped make Universal.
All right, fair.
Oh, so is it called Universal or is it called Source?
Source code. Oh. It's called Central language.
We'll put a pin in it because we are past time now.
We are. Central's
but we'll
good,
come
though.
back.
I'm gonna
That'll be
note
the first
but
thing.
No, you need Universal.
Universal Central Source, something like that. All right. Because we are now out of time, we will leave you with a couple of things here. First of all, you can tune back into the stream. We do it at the same day, same time. We start around 6:30 p.m. We go to 8:30 p.m., give or take. We are going to continue on with this probably next stream. If not, we'll do like a one-page RPG, or we'll do an adventure build for the next one, and then jump back in the week after. Besides that, you can follow us on Twitch, subscribe to us on YouTube, go to our website, ttrpguy.com, for all of our articles on DMing and world building and stuff like that. Follow us on Facebook, etc., etc., etc. So follow us on all those to stay updated. We also stream every Wednesday. We're going to try to do 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. this Wednesday for a Theros actual play, DM by me, played by these two, and also a couple of our other friends. That's it. So Michael and Ethan, go ahead and log us off. Michael, say our final farewell.
I want to add one other piece of information that is very exciting for those of you who have been sort of long-term watchers. We've officially entered playtest for our one-page RPG, Devil's Due. We are excited to say we did a little brief one. We obviously need to do a few more of those. You need to make sure that your game is fun to play and able to be understood. But initial, I think, reaction was relatively positive. We have obviously some more work to do, but we're very excited to see where that goes. I guess I'll say goodbye, YouTube. I hope you enjoyed today's viewing experience.
Yeah, and everyone that's been listening, thank you very much for tuning in. We hope you have a great rest of your day, night, week, month, all that, because y'all deserve it so much. And we'll see you on the next one. Till then.